everybody.
Howdy.
Howdy. So this is Jorn, and this is my friend Tracy.
Hello, everyone.
So we're doing things a little bit different today, but maybe the way they should be. We were, pontificating and thinking about office hours topics, and we came up with a solution that came from two places. One, there's lots of little frequently asked questions that we see in the community at large. Our customers come to us with them as they're looking at Rundeck. They come into support. They're out there in the open source community, and we hear them at booths and talking with friends and colleagues. And the other thing that we sort of remembered is that the name office hours really does imply that this is a casual conversation amongst all of us Rundeckers, and not just a show where you grab some popcorn and sit and watch. So,
although this could be a show that you grab some popcorn and sit and watch.
That's true. You are very entertaining. You are very entertaining. But with that being said, we're going to be a little bit looser with the format rather than sticking to one highlighted sentence. We've got some questions that did come into the field that we kind of have ready, and we're able to answer those in sort of an ad hoc ad lib format. But with that being said, those of you who are participating, we really would love some questions to come into the QA about Rundeck. Don't be shy. We could play a little bit of Stump the Chump today. And not just, maybe deeper technical questions, high-level philosophical questions, what the air raid sirens are doing in the background of Tracy's audio. Don't worry, they're off now. But we're ready for that. Tracy, are you good?
I'm good.
You had a question already come in. You want to just leap on into the deep end of the pool with it?
Let's just jump right on in.
Awesome.
So Brett asks, we are planning to do a POC with Rundeck for the following task. And I'm going to generalize the tasks here, but basically user requests a token from HashiCorp Vault, ServiceNow ticket is created, has to be approved by a manager. We would like then to do an additional API call to Vault for token creation. User receives the token via email and or Slack. And there were a couple of cases that they had asked about this. And basically the question was, can Rundeck do this? Is it reasonable?
And can Rundeck do that?
Rundeck can definitely do this. So self-service tasks like this are exactly the kind of things that we target. But
I hear a but coming. This doesn't feel very self-service to me, Tracy, because if I listen to your question, the end user is requesting a token from Vault, and then a ticket gets in there. And then I guess a human being sees the ticket and
exactly
says, that's okay, and then routes it back to HashiCorp, and then the end user gets themselves that token and via email and or Slack. So then the end user has got this token. That sounds like the procedure that they outlined.
Exactly. And so it sounds like, so this is one of those cases where I like to count how many users are involved in this. So we have a user, we have a manager, and then we have somebody who's probably interfacing with Vault to some degree. So obviously you've got the number of people. That's a good thing. You want to eliminate tasks that require more and more people to be involved in it. And if you can do all of those things with self-service, yay. But there's also this, you've got a manager approving this. And so this is a common thing. Like when you have somebody who needs to approve something, are they really approving it? Or are they just kind of there to be aware and to have some responsibility that, yes, I said they could do the thing? How many times are you saying no?
Yeah, that sounds like somebody being put into a queue and waiting for another human being in a procedure that I would imagine if we asked this end user or anybody else even listening to our voices right now, like you were just alluding to, how often do you say no to ticket requests?
Exactly.
Not very often. Most of the time you say yes, and you say yes by way of some information that came to you, that gave you the criteria, that gives you the yes that you say almost all the time. And that's supplied by some system, some back-end processes, some information that's generally measurable and maybe even binary. And that makes me wonder, why are we shoving people into ticketing queues? That doesn't sound very self-service to me.
Yeah, so that's when I read the question, so yes, absolutely Rundeck can do these things and these type of requests and route requests and update to other systems and do this kind of thing. But when we kind of focus on ROI or how much time are you saving people, yes, I mean, this has a lot of the elements of toil, definitely fits that. But we might change. So one of the things I think we see a lot, Jordan, and correct me, is we see a lot of, we want to mimic the exact same process that we came in with. We just want to do it with another tool involved in it.
And that sounds like increasing complexity to me. So, and Tracy, I just saw that Richard typed some very wise color into this. And he says, the Vault, the ServiceNow approval to Slack, great example. And I agree, Richard, we see that one all the time. And lots of people will have to do PCI compliance, for example. And he says that provides an audit trail for external auditors. Totally agree.
Absolutely.
And by practice, whether it's a good idea or not, our ticketing queues, whether it's Jira, Snow, whatever it may be, have become the place where auditing kind of sort of happens. And it still should continue to happen. So Tracy, what do we say to that?
Well, we say yes, we can do it. And we say yes, that the compliance angle, yes, we can cover that. We can show that. I think that the question that I go back with is, do you have this management approval because it's required by compliance, or is it just you're trying to make sure that other people are aware that you have now the ability to do something? Because if it's the latter, and the approval step is really just a documentation of somebody saying, thumbs up, because you've given 100% thumbs up to everyone who requested it, in the last year, then maybe we can eliminate that, use a notification so that we can, create the ticket, procure the key for them or the token, and everything gets notified. It's all tracked. We all have visibility of it. We can keep it a self-service job, but we can eliminate this complexity in the beginning of it.
In other words, we don't have to queue people in order to do auditing.
Exactly.
Those things do not have to be attached to the same thing.
My other question back to this would be, is this your biggest ROI? Is this the biggest thing that's causing you pain in your environment? Is this the most complex, long-taking task that you've, or is this, what was the decision-making behind that? Because if we can, especially if you're in engineering and Rundeck, we see a lot of engineers using Rundeck, using the open source, and they reach a certain point where they're promoting it to their management, and they kind of have to prove, no, we need this tool. We're using it for these things. It's saving us time. It's saving us toil, etc. And so there is a need sometimes to prove that ROI to your management or your boss or the CIO or whoever it is. And so we kind of want that to be something significant enough that it's like a no-brainer. Oh my gosh, you're doing this here. We could do this over here. Also, where maybe management has some visibility into other areas. So that's where I'm kind of like, this is a menial task. It's absolutely toil, but is it going to attract the kind of visibility if you're looking to expand usage or, be seen as the hero providing self-service? Is this the mountain that you've chosen to climb?
So in other words, the basis of the question was, can Rundeck help me functionally with this? And the answer, to answer the mail was yes. What we're saying is elevate the question. Rundeck could help you functionally with that, but don't just increase your complexity, decrease it. Turn that into something that's a little bit more self-service. And in fact, even the steps in that initial question could be collapsed down. Don't have Rundeck wrap around all of those procedures. Maybe eliminate some of them because you put them there, because you're putting people into queues for unnecessary reasons. And that's the ROI you're talking about.
Precisely.
Time savings. The person, because we have to ask the question, what did that person want? They wanted a token. No, they didn't. In the end, they wanted to interact with a database. They didn't want any of the other things. Those had no value. Those were just bumps along the road that they had to follow through. And that's where Rundeck comes in by providing that value. So I think the summary is, yes, Rundeck can do that. However, dear customer, let's elevate that conversation and make all of your users happier by maybe even increasing the auditing and compliance that drove the procedure in the first place.
Yeah, the only negative I can see is we're taking something away from management that they actually did.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if pressing yes in ticketing queues is a value add to some people's business, that is their business. But hopefully they see that as toil and they want to eliminate that.
Let's hope.
I got nothing else in the QA, so we've got a couple of things that did come in from the community before.
Yes.
I know you've got those as well, so go ahead, Tracy.
Next question. Ramon asks, and I don't see Ramon as a participant, so he sent this in and didn't show up. So I'm sure he'll listen to the tantalizing audio recording. We are comparing Rundeck to Ansible Tower and are looking for differences between them. Very common question.
But it's a very tools approach question, but it's a common one. Yeah, so people that have that a lot, and I think, and again, we're going high level, instead of getting philosophical about things today, but that comes from that approach where we often see, and we engineers in the field, those of us who've been in this for a while, our brains tend to work this way, maybe even more than others, but we try to associate the universe around us with things that we already understand. And when we come across what we see as a tool, like Rundeck, that we've never heard of before, or we're trying to understand it, we try to get a frame of reference like, oh, it's just like this other tool. And sometimes, maybe a lot of times, that's less useful to all of us in our thinking than is necessary. And here the basis of that question is, hey, is it just like insert tool I've heard of before? When it comes to Rundeck being in front of Ansible and Ansible playbooks, probably the most common use case that I've ever seen here. I have never had a day here at Rundeck where I will not discuss with somebody Rundeck and Ansible playing well together. They are a fantastic combination. But this question was, hey, I'm looking at Ansible Tower, hands on hips. Tell me about the Delta because I want my tools to get into a fight, or maybe they don't, but that's kind of what the question is.
Absolutely. And probably more common comes from folks who have already spent a lot of time learning Ansible, proponents of Ansible. It is a great tool. Great way of automating. And so we've even started using this slide recently when we're doing, private demos and stuff like that, to kind of, we don't compete directly with anything. We don't compete directly with Tower. Tower has some great benefits, but it's really more focused with the Ansible piece of defining your infrastructure. Ansible's great for that. Kind of like the Jenkins question, which we have coming up. Jenkins defines how you're building artifacts, your CI/CD pipeline. There are different automation tools for different aspects of an IT environment. So Rundeck is a little less opinionated and really is meant to define your operations, right? All of the tasks that you're doing in operations. And that's why we don't have a Ansible language within Rundeck. Rundeck runs Ansible or Bash or Python or everything else. So our coverage is much more complete as to the things that you can run and the things that you can connect into workflows and as part of a playbook or running something in Bash or updating a ticket or all of these other things that you would do that would kind of be necessary to provide self-service. And that's really where Rundeck's focus is. Ansible Tower is not really focused on self-service. It's focused on running Ansible and Ansible playbooks and those kind of things. I can't think of any other way to kind of differentiate them. Now, the cost difference, the licensing, significant difference. That could be a significant difference.
Yeah, and that's, you know what, and I know you had sort of a Jenkins thing coming up next, but we all get this question a lot, and I'll be very, very brief on it unless somebody in the audience wants us to go a little bit deeper. But we get from the Rundeck Enterprise standpoint, not just the deltas between open source and Rundeck Enterprise, which is a valuable question, but we get the high level, how do you license Rundeck? And I'm going to be very, very high level about it. We license Rundeck essentially on two metrics. One is how many Rundeck servers are in your environment. And secondarily, how many users are using Rundeck inside of your environment. We don't, from a pricing standpoint, have any opinion about how many jobs you write, how many jobs you run, nor how many nodes you run it against. We want you to use Rundeck and enjoy it. And whether you're running 10 jobs a day against 50 hosts, or you're running 10,000 jobs a day against 20,000 nodes, we're here to help you. And we don't want usage to become a linear burden on your cost model.
Unlimited automation, unlimited target nodes.
Yep. All right, back on the road anyway. That was my digression, but that question comes in a lot. In fact, it was down on my list of things that people ask often.
Next question. Jared asks, here it is. When should we use Jenkins And when should we use Rundeck? So
it's similar. It's kind of similar to the Ansible thing, isn't it?
Very.
Or I get this one every once in a while where somebody we'll talk about the high level, the philosophy of doing self-service operations or the things that the value that Rundeck brings. And somebody with varying levels of hands on hips goes, oh, we're doing all of that with Jenkins.
Yes, but that is usually, again, Jenkins very focused on building your code, building an artifact, building something, and the changes that you are making within that. So that's the whole CI, continuous integration. If I make a change to the code, it automatically gets checked in, it automatically gets built. We have immediate validation that I didn't screw something up. And that's what Jenkins is, phenomenal at. There are lots of other things that you may have to do. The second you have to put your fingers on a keyboard to install an application or set a configuration setting or do something in production that maybe requires a firewall change or load balancer change or all the myriad of systems that are there to support your application that you're not going to affect through Jenkins. So, and we use Jenkins at Rundeck as well.
Yeah, that is a good drink your own Kool-Aid kind of point. Like if it did everything, we know that all these tools, have value up against the way we run our operations. And there are other well-known tools in the universe that we happen to use internally ourselves.
Exactly. And that's probably the most common is we do see Jenkins and Rundeck working in the same environments. Typically the Rundeck type jobs, while they may affect components of Jenkins or some action that Jenkins takes, it's usually also envelops some other tasks, notifications, whatever the case may be that is more fitting for a self-service, I need this now kind of thing, or, I do this 2 or 3 times a week. This saves me having to bug the guys in the NOC, that kind of thing.
Can we assume that's clear for our audience?
I think it is. It's certainly clear on the Q&A dashboard.
I know we've got some other ones that came in. And we've got other Rundeckers on the phone as well that can talk to it. I'm going to put you on the spot, Tracy, and other people on the call, but there are several questions that sort of roll up underneath one master question. And we get this one often. And I think it rolls up underneath the topic of the proper care and feeding of Rundeck itself. We get this more often than I probably would have expected without exposure, but it's a lot of, how do I keep Rundeck running? Give me some recommendations for performance tuning. People often come to us, how do I back up Rundeck? Or how do I do disaster recovery with Rundeck? Or what database do you want me to use? And we're often kind of shy about being strongly opinionated about things. And we have a reason for that because we want people to be flexible inside of their environment. But can you help at least from a high level, put some of those concerns to rest from how Rundeck is really put together from an application standpoint, how to keep it happy, and things that people worry about that maybe they shouldn't?
That's got a lot of tentacles on it.
I know, and I just asked 11 questions right there, but
so my knee-jerk reaction would be for sure, don't forget that we offer support for Rundeck Enterprise. We also have the Google forum for Rundeck, which we actually do support. We have folks from Rundeck who actually are actively monitoring that and answering questions along with community to support that. So there is help there for, every individual environment may have its own implications and mm-hmm. jobs and things and performance variables that are at play in those environments. That all said, aside from, yes, we're there to help and you can get support for that in the forums, et cetera, it is a Java application. So being familiar with how Java applications behave, the kind of things that you want to monitor, like heap, memory, disk space, some of the kind of the basics. Rundeck in particular takes advantage of a lot of the components that are already in your environment. So we are definitely keeping the complexity low from a Rundeck standpoint. We're not using a lot of proprietary technologies to do anything. We're agentless. We're using SSH and WinRM and the basics that are already there and have been proven over time to work and be secure, et cetera, et cetera. so those, and there are some tips, recently one of our architects, engineers, Dutch, was talking about setting the minimum and the maximum on your Java heap size to be the same number so that you're not having to swap space. This reminded me of, tuning Windows PCs for gaming. You didn't want the virtual memory swapping around, so you would just max it out and set it, the min max to the same number. So you just kind of eliminate the computer having to do all of that work. Mm-hmm. So those are the kind of things that we would see. But again, for something like this, generic settings, there are some performance tips in the Rundeck documentation. But if you're seeing a need, if you're not seeing any issues and you're just trying to tune, yes, absolutely. But for specific settings and things like that, reach out to the forums, reach out to support.
Yeah, you make a good point there, because I'm surprised I run into people who are in the community and they'll ask me a question and I'm like, oh, that's a good question. Did you post that? If they're using Opens, did you post that in the community? And they'll say, no, I've never posted anything there. And I'm like, why? It's a really valuable resource. By all means, please type your question there. I want to see it go by and we'll look for the answer to that. And another thing that you did mention, and Dutch will be upset with me for this, but it's just too late because this is live television. I want to introduce Dutch to our broader community. Dutch, we've been trying to recruit him for a long time. Dutch has been a long-time Rundeck user, has a lot of broad and deep experience in IT operations and beyond, and we're happy to have him as part of the team. And if we get some really gnarly questions coming in here, we might even just elbow him and say, come off mute and answer them, because Dutch knows his stuff. And that's a good segue into more questions from Richard, and they're awesome questions. And I'm going to read them so that the community can see it. And he says, we've been using Rundeck for longer than I can remember. Thank you, Richard. And this is a good one, right? He says, we struggle with training people to code for it. People don't get it. They try to compare it to what they know. And he's wondering when, Rundeck's going to come out with and he capitalizes these words as I would. Good job, Richard. For training and certification to actually promote the product, because certification, engineers love certifications even more than stickers, and they love stickers a lot. So, and I like Richard a lot. That's an extremely good question. Not only about just training people getting it, but maybe should we come up with a Rundeck certification program and levels and tiering? I know we've talked about that a little bit internally, and I don't want to speak out of turn for some of the other people that might be on the call.
Yeah, so it has been recognized, certainly, and for users of Rundeck who move to the enterprise version, we do provide onboarding, we provide some training. Every environment is pretty unique. Sometimes we do really quick training, and then other times it's like you said, it's more kind of the end users, the differences between a job writer and a job runner. And so, yeah, and it's actually, I think once those users kind of get it, it does become easier, but it's exactly like you're saying, they have a preconceived notion of what Rundeck is, and there's some expectations there that can sometimes, take you off in a different direction because you're kind of expecting, well, but I've used Tower before, or I've used something before, and I'm expecting it to be like that. But what we found in experience, and there's a couple of actually in the training experience, we do have some tutorials within the documentation. We also have, we've even built some plugins that allow you to adapt the UI to help new users. We actually use it, if you want to see it, we use it in our test drive environment. So if you go to rundeck.com, you can spin up a free trial. It's for those who, rather than spending time on having to install it to actually get to something where you can see something done, we spin up an environment in the cloud, and we have some built projects there, and we have a little run duck. And I should have spun one up. Jordan, if you have one, we can.
I don't actually. I deleted mine. I should go back and
didn't even think about this. But yeah, we have a little run duck. It's just a little duck, and you can click on that, and it will take you through different sections of the application. Well, that just so happens to be one of our UI plugins. So you could adapt that plugin to show your users where to go. Here's how to run a job. Here's how to do this. Here's how to do that. So that would definitely help with that. We have been talking, so the training piece for users, we are in the process of building new videos, updating videos from the past. There's an awful lot of work that's actually going into a complete refresh of all of this stuff, especially with the new 3.1 version coming in. It's got a lot of UI changes. So we have some freshening up to do there for that, as well as for the training. And I mean, the certifications, I haven't heard a whole lot of talk about this.
Well, we've been talking about a little bit back about the certifications and getting the onboarding training. So I think the short answer, Richard, is yes, we hear you. We've been mulling that over and trying to figure out different tiers of certifications. And there's also some parts, and our customer success and onboarding team is doing a great job writing some more documentation that's overarching and a little bit more streamlined, and trying to make sure that users of Rundeck remember that in many cases, Rundeck is automation, Fourier automation. So don't try to learn sort of the language of Rundeck, because there really isn't. The language of Rundeck from a coding standpoint is adapting to all of the things in the rest of your world. So I hope that helps a little bit. Richard came in. There's a couple more questions, Tracy. See, I told you today would be fun. Richard did ask about Windows. What's better? Do we do WinRM from Linux? Or do you fire up a Windows node to do PowerShell? Oh, very, very, very popular question, and it's a good one. As an engineer, I'll give you the popular engineer answer. It depends. So I think, yeah, we'll probably have to wait till next week because we want to get into some of the details. Some of it are hard facts. Some of it's our opinions that depend upon your environment.
Jordan, I'm going to bump in here for a second. That webinar is tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Not
on
even
Windows and Rundeck.
Tomorrow.
So you only have to wait 24 hours.
I don't even know what day it is. So thank you. Awesome. Another question about housekeeping of logs.
Ooh.
How? And yeah, I like that one.
Well, let's see here. I can show you a little something that is coming in the 3.1 or is in 3.1. I'm on actually an older version. This is an old and busted version.
It's public knowledge now that Rundeck 3.1 is a release candidate. We tweeted about that stuff.
We sure did.
So it's
and retweeted.
We retweeted and said, "Please try this out, Rundeckers. Kick it around."
Absolutely. So a portion of that, so log management, you have the executions of the jobs, and then you also have the logs themselves. So we've added this little feature in 3.1 that is this execution history clean. And if you enable it, you can schedule automatically per project how long you want to keep those logs. And this would actually affect the execution history, but also the logs that are associated with that execution. So you can set the number of days to keep. Maybe it's a select number. We got this request as a result of some users who were leveraging Rundeck for API testing, and they execute roughly 18,000 jobs per day. So many jobs and so many logs that they were having troubles with the logs and the database and everything filling up very, very quickly. And so this made sense. So we quickly created an enhancement to help customers and users in that situation to enable them to clean that history. So great, timely question.
Yeah, I think people are going to start thinking that we're paying Richard to lob softballs at us at this point because they're all great questions that we have answers for.
Does that take care of that question?
It does. I think it takes care of that question because we do have some of those mechanisms built in. And if people need to go deeper, absolutely one-on-one us, user support mechanisms with background emails directly. Another question that came in is about proxies. And this one happens, it says our environment all work behind firewalls in a customer data center environment. So no direct internet. So how do we configure Rundeck so that it can use HTTPS proxy, and is there a recommendation? And this is probably a broader, higher recommendation about, getting past proxies, and maybe even the topic of jump hosts, et cetera, sort of fits into the side of this.
We even have users who have a policy of no direct contact with their production environment. So the question or the answer to the question of how, deeper question, but it is a JVM setup that you can use to hook up a proxy. So you can absolutely do that. And if you can, probably too detailed for technical to get into that there. But if you will shoot an email to Tracy at Rundeck, TRACY, or Jorn at Rundeck, JORN, we'll be happy to follow up with that question as well.
Yeah, Richard, type that proxy question is, so plugins do work, ServiceNow, Slack, etc. I think I understand what he's asking. Can the plugins run across an encrypted connection?
I don't know that I wouldn't see why they wouldn't.
Yeah. I think the answer to that is yes. That should work fine. And if you want deets, like Richard said, let's drop an email and we'll take that one offline.
Excellent Stump the Chump question. Excellent. 9 out of 10.
Yeah. I've got nothing else in the live QA, which is of course what I want to be. I want to be very mindful of.
Most concerned with others that came in off of the Twitterverse. Self-service. How am I not doing that now by having ServiceNow tickets and then having my engineers use Ansible or Jenkins? Because I think that is. So I think
if you don't want to say it, I'll say it.
Go for it.
That's not self-service. Shoving people into queues to have to wait for other expensive people to finally just push the button for you is putting people into queues to finally engage into some automation that you put in that you didn't have last year. Congratulations for that. But shoving your ticketing system in there for making people wait, that's fine, but you don't get to call that self-service. Self-service is reducing the amount of time people spend in queues, not increasing it. We get that one every once in a while, like, well, wait a minute, I'm doing self-service, people open tickets. Like, opposite definition.
Well, and let me add on to that. We also hear occasionally, we're talking with an engineer, talking to them about self-service, and the comment may come up, well, if I do that, then I won't have anything to do. I'm going to be giving all of the jobs, all the things that I do in response to these requests. If I just automate it and give it back to them as self-service, then I'm automating myself out of a job.
Oh boy.
Yes. The proverbial, I'll work myself out of a job. No, that does not happen. I have never seen that happen in 25 years of IT. The more you automate and the more you are seen as somebody who automates things and provides self-service, the more they are going to give you. You might even get a promotion. We typically see those doing that get promoted, end up with teams doing the exact same thing to eliminate toil and provide self-service. It absolutely grows, it spreads like wildfire, grows like a weed, whatever analogy you want to use. And it becomes very popular because when you have users who are getting self-service and they no longer have to wait for somebody to provision them a token or give them access or deliver me this data file or whatever it is, they're happy. And they're happy with you because you gave them something that they could use to do their job, which is kind of the definition of software development in general. You're doing something in software so that allows somebody to do something. And whether it's automation in Rundeck, whether it's a full-blown application, it's the same thing. You're just giving somebody the ability to do something and not have to necessarily bug you or interrupt your day or come up and do a drive-by in your cube.
So what you're saying is it's pretty hard to imagine that people are out there getting fired for delivering higher value to their company.
I've never heard of that.
I mean, either, right? And we've all worked or seen cultures where, value is almost entirely measured by how busy you are and not how valuable you really are. And there are companies out there that are like that. If that's the culture you're in, hey, maybe you can find a better culture. But yeah, somebody's got to come to me and say that's actually happened, that the attempt to work themselves out of a job by improving the world around them actually resulted in them being unemployed. I've never seen it happen.
One of the best responses I have heard came from one of our co-founders, Alex Honor. Was given the challenge of, well, but they're not really waiting, right? They send the request and then they're doing something else. And that's true. And I'll paraphrase the answer. That's true. But now you've got balls in the air. You're juggling multiple things. You've sent multiple requests and you're keeping yourself busy. But at the same time, you got a lot of stuff now you're trying to track. And when I get this back, I can do the thing, or I'm waiting on Joe to provide this, or Beth is, as soon as she gets done with this thing, I can do my other thing with this and pass it on to, Alice or whoever it is. So just the, keeping balls in the air and making yourself busy with other tasks while you're waiting is not necessarily the most efficient. There's context switching in there. There are studies about how inefficient that is. So being busy is not the rule of thumb. It's like, how quickly can you get something done, produce some results end to end, and do it, via self-service, automation, et cetera, et cetera.
And Tracy, you make a good point with the context switching, because if somebody creates a ticket and all an engineer has to do is run an Ansible playbook, yet the task itself might have been automated, but what are you pulling the engineer from? Maybe he's writing another playbook to automate another task, and all of a sudden it takes him 20 minutes to get back in the groove of that because he had to answer this one ticket.
Absolutely. Those engineers are out there saving lives. You're interrupting them. Hi, Dutch. Thanks for joining.
We got Dutch off mute. There we go.
Awesome.
Yeah, and that's the power that Rundeck has with that, because rather than a customer creating or a user creating a ticket in ServiceNow and waiting for work to happen, it'd be great if they could just log in the Rundeck, click a button, it creates that ticket, runs that Ansible playbook, and then closes that ticket. And there's no waiting. There's no so-called balls in the air.
There are books written about this topic. We can recommend some.
It's a lot of fun when we hear about companies do a lot of measurements on the data they have. And tickets is one of those things that they measure a lot, right? Mean time to resolution, how many SEV1s versus SEV2s, all of these metrics that's, you have a weekly or bi-weekly meeting with an Excel spreadsheet looking at all the open issues. So much fun. Everybody does it. And there's a lot of metrics being tracked with that, and nice pie charts being sent to management and different things like that. The most gratifying stories that we hear are of, well, we were being measured on mean time to resolution, and now because the ticket gets opened, the job is run automatically and the ticket is closed. That went from like 3 hours to 3 minutes, which is it's real. And so that also, again, kind of garners the attention of, wait, that's not right. That has to be, you couldn't have done that in 3 minutes from the time it was open till it was done. Oh, yes, it is, because it's now self-service. We're now tracking self-service.
Oh, Richard asked an awesome question. And I'm going to confess that I don't know the answer to this question, and I've wondered it for very, very long. And I need to know. How
it's not the first time we've heard this question.
How does Rundeck, right, for example, like, mozzarella stick, Peru, piggy bank, where do these names come from and what do they mean?
Is this where we talk about the giant magic 8-ball?
It's probably more systematic than that.
I don't know. I do know that it is randomized, and if I'm not mistaken, we look forward to finding out the new name as much as anybody, because I don't think we know before it is generated.
Oh, that's the one we're on right now, too. Mozzarella stick, Peru, piggy bank.
That's the one this one is on.
That's what you're on. Yeah, that's right.
I'm on a snapshot from, a couple of weeks ago. So, yeah, this is not the latest snapshot. But I have found it to be very stable.
But that's the name for 310. So it'll stick with that until we increment a digit.
Exactly.
Well, Tracy, I think we've hit most of the questions that came in. I think we've hit most of the questions from QA. And if somebody has any further questions, maybe we call it a wrap on this episode of Car Talk for Rundeck.
Yeah, the first one, and potentially the last.
Yeah, don't ops like my brother.
There
Yeah,
will
I
be,
wouldn't mind
there
some
will be a
feedback too
retrospective on this, and we will evaluate.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind some feedback, from the audience. Again, office hours should be a little bit more casual. I think it should be a little bit more ad hoc. We also have like training sessions like the one that's coming up tomorrow, not next week, that are very, very focused on things. But this is office hours. We're all hanging out together, sipping some coffee, bouncing around run deck ideas and run deck questions. So I hope that this was valuable for those who attended. It was fun for me. And I got through a delicious cup of coffee during the whole thing too.
Absolutely.